Some remarkable things that have happened already, and I've got 6 series worth of stuff on the board. And coming out of last night, Paul Friesen, a reporter for the Winnipeg Sun, asked a question to Blake Wheeler that he felt was offside, and he told him to F off. And I don't blame Blake Wheeler. And I really honestly think that there's a lot of sports stars that would be a lot more honest sometimes if they had the opportunity. um, because we're in a league now where home ice should mean something and it doesn't. And that's the thing. I look at some of these teams, I look at the records they put together, and I ask myself, next year during the regular season, will things be different? You look at Tampa, that's the ultimate example, right? 128 points. They were 7-3 in their last 10 going to the playoffs. They'd won 2 in a row. They didn't seem to be as sharp. They seemed to be a little bit off compared to how they were playing most of the rest of the season. But that's okay because, at the end of the day, they were first in the league. They were number one. They had a goal differential of 103. These guys were great. They were winning each game by an average of more than a goal, which may have given them a false sense of security. They were 32-7-2 at home. So they won 32 out of 41 at home. They were great. In the playoffs, they went 0-2 at home. And again, the start of game one, it's almost like it went too easy. And I'm not sure what happened after that. But I think a lot of credit can be given as well to Columbus. And I don't think it takes away from what the President's Trophy winners did by giving the credit to Columbus. Columbus finished 13th overall, but they had 98 points. And this is why when people talk about this and there's a 15 game differential, there's 30 points between the two. Yes, but over the last 10 games, Columbus was also 7-3. They'd won 2 in a row, and Columbus had been playing for their lives for over a month, whereas Tampa had not. And it is hard to raise that intensity level. I think where Blake Wheeler got offended was the insinuation in the question from the reporter was, why didn't you guys try harder? So you guys didn't try really hard. And Blake Wheeler's answer is basically along the lines of, this is the hardest trophy to win in sports, depending on who you ask. But saying this is a really tough trophy to win, which is true. And, St. Louis played really well as well. So, their best was pretty good. We tried our best. And he may very well believe that Winnipeg tried their best. I would say that there are issues in the way that this team was prepared for the playoffs, this team being Winnipeg. Winnipeg, though, was 10th overall. They had 99 points. They were not playing like a cup contender for about a month and a half before the playoffs started. But, they had been picked by the Hockey News and by many to win the Stanley Cup this year. Coming out of last year's playoffs where they finished in the Final Four, the belief was this team's just going to get better. They're going to keep getting better. Now they're in cap hell. They and Tampa both are in cap hell. And it'll be very interesting to see this summer what happens, because this may have been their best shot at it. And on that level, I can understand the disappointment. But they were 4-5-1 going into the playoffs. And then in the playoffs, they were 0-3 at home. During the season, they were 25-12-4 at home. So during the season, they were great at home. In the postseason, nope. St. Louis with the comeback. St. Louis, though, was an excellent road team during the season. And I had said, St. Louis might be better off starting on the road. And they were. St. Louis finished 12th in the league, but they also had 99 points, the same total as Winnipeg. They were 8-1-1 in their last 10, and they'd won 2 in a row going into the playoffs. So this was a confident team that believed in itself, playing against a team that had doubts. And a team that had watched themselves lose that first spot in the division to the Nashville Predators. Now, Nashville, of course, has issues of their own against Dallas. I don't have them on the board because they're not playing today. Calgary finished second in the league, 107 points. 6-4 in their last 10. They lost their last 2. And going into the playoffs, I was concerned with how Calgary seemed to be playing going into the playoffs, but I was told these games don't mean anything. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. They'll be fine. They finished 1-2 at home in the playoffs. That one win was the first game in the series. They were 26-10-5 at home during the regular season. And really, in all honesty, I'm kind of surprised that Colorado knocked them out. Not because I didn't think Colorado was good. Colorado, though they were 17th in the league, and every Montreal fan will tell you that, they finished with 90 points. They were 7-1-2 in their last 10. They did lose their last game. But, that 7-1-2 record gets them into a playoff spot against Calgary, a team that had looked like maybe they'd peaked earlier in the year. And peaking at the right time, this year seems to be far more important than other seasons. Not every series is being won by the team that was playing better going into the playoffs, but pretty darn close. The New York Islanders, for instance, finished 5th in the league. This one can't be considered a huge upset other than the fact that it's the Penguins. The Penguins finished with 100 points, the Islanders with 103. The Penguins were 5-2-3 in their last 10. They had an overtime loss in their last game. And the Islanders were 6-4 going into the playoffs. They'd won 2 in a row. The Penguins finished 0-2 at home in the playoffs. They were 23-14-4 at home during the regular season. And they were good at home. This is a team that was quite good at home during the regular season. That the 18 losses, a lot of that was at the start of the year where they were struggling at home to start things off. And there were talks about, Pittsburgh maybe bottoming out. And I think those talks are going to start to pick up steam this summer. I think there's going to be more talk about how Pittsburgh could be one of the teams that finds themselves on the outside looking in next spring at the playoffs. Because at some point, the magic, stops. And it kind of feels like with Pittsburgh, we may very well be there. But again, the Islanders, it's not that the Islanders weren't favored because they weren't, for any reason other than the Penguins are the Penguins. You've got Crosby, you've got Malkin, you've got Kessel, you got Matt Murray in net. You've got a pretty solid team, and yet they lost 4 in a row to go out. Now, teams that are on the endangered list today, the Boston Bruins, who play in an hour and a half, they finished 3rd in the league with 107 points. They were 6-4 in their last 10. They lost their last game. I didn't think they were playing particularly well going into the playoffs. I did not like the fact they were resting Marchand and others going into the playoffs. I like the idea of playing your best roster and have everybody on the same page and feeling good about themselves going to the playoffs. I don't like resting players at all. And you look at some of these teams on this side and you ask yourself how many players got rested in those last few games that didn't mean anything, while some teams down here were playing games that meant a whole lot to them. They're 1-2 at home are the Bruins so far. That's why they find themselves in a position where they can get eliminated today. They were 29-9-3 at home during the regular season. Whereas Toronto, who finished 7th in the league with 100 points, you'll notice they're only 2 points clear of 13th in the league with 98. 3-4-3 was their record in their last 10. They had an overtime loss in their last game. You can make the argument, well, Toronto didn't really have anything to play for. They weren't dropping further than 3rd, and they weren't going to catch Boston in 2nd. To which I say, there were plenty of times where Toronto could have gotten a lot closer to Boston, and they weren't able to make up that ground. But it turns out home ice, it really doesn't matter a whole lot. Boston's lost 2 out of 3 at home. If Toronto can win 2 out of 3 at home, that's it. They win 2 out of 3 at home, 2 out of 3 on the road, and they're all done. The interesting thing with Toronto, of course, is they were a better road team during the regular season than they were at home. Boston, though, was not a great road team either. They actually, I believe, they lost more on the road than they won if you include overtime and shootout losses as regular losses. I think they won 15 on the road all season. You take a quick look. They were 20, 15, and 6. So yes, 20 wins, 15 regulation losses, and 6 overtime or shootout losses. So Boston was below 500 on the road, but their home record was supposed to save them. It just didn't. San Jose, they're on the verge of potentially being eliminated because they can't win in Vegas. They have 101 points this season to the 93 for Vegas. Vegas finished 16th in the league. Yes, they were behind Montreal. I know. San Jose 3-6-1 in their last 10. They won 2 in a row, and that was them going into the playoffs. But Vegas was 3-5-2, and they'd lost 2 in a row. So I was sort of like, I don't know. And I remember thinking that with the series when I was looking before. I'm like, I don't know. They won a combined 6 games in 20 going into the playoffs. So I don't know. And I went with Vegas because I think at playoff time, I think Vegas is just the better team. 25-11-5 was the record for San Jose at home. They have been 2-1 at home. The problem is they have not won in Vegas. If they'd won one of those first 2 games in Vegas, games 3 and 4, just one of those two, we're in a situation where they could potentially be knocking out Vegas today. It is a fine line between winning and losing, and that's what we're finding out. And sadly, when teams get knocked out, you're always going to have a reporter sticking a microphone in their face asking an inane question. And I've seen a lot of debate about this. I've seen people saying, hey, it's a fair question. It's a fair question to ask them why they didn't play very well. It's not, though. Because to me, and that's why when people ask, why did Calgary get knocked out by Colorado? And I say it looks like Colorado just wanted it more. It's not a lack of effort that I see from the teams that get knocked out. It is a tremendous yeoman's effort put out by the teams that knock them out. So I don't look at this and say, oh, this is so, what an absolutely horrendous series. You're going to have horrendous plays. You're going to have a team with 6 shots in the first 2 periods, and you can't have that in an elimination game. But let's give credit to the team that held them to 6 shots through the first 2 periods and ask, what were they doing to get to that? How did they only allow 1 shot in the second period? What were they doing defensively that frustrated this team that much? And it was basically a throw of the dice between these two teams. They had the same number of points, but St. Louis was the much better team over the second half. St. Louis was the best team in the Central over the second half of the season. Nashville and Winnipeg both kind of stumbled into the playoffs. Nashville played better that last 10 games. That's how they overcame the lead Winnipeg had. Winnipeg was stumbling, and they took advantage of it. But because Nashville was 7-3 in their last 10 going into the playoffs, they'd won a couple games in a row, and that is essentially how they held off the Winnipeg Jets. But Nashville hadn't been playing great either. So maybe now it's more important how a team's playing going into the playoffs than it used to be. These are things that I'm learning along the way, and of course when I adjust, and next year I see a record like this going into the playoffs, and I say, you know what, that number 8 seed, I like them, I think they're going to win it, then they'll get swept, and everybody will be like, Shannon, you thought they were going to win. Yeah, it's tough. Because of the fact that teams are so close together, you've got the number 2 team in the league with 107, and the number 13 team in the league with 98. That is a 9-point difference over 82 games. That's not very much. So there you go. And that's an 11-spot difference in the standings. It's just crazy. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. And it is a truly amazing season that we've had already. And this postseason, it looks like if you can't hold home ice, you're done. That's it. The teams that got knocked out, 0-3, 0-2, 0-2, 1-2 at home. And the teams that could get knocked out today, 1-2 at home, 2-1 at home, couldn't win on the road. So we'll see, right? Whether or not these are the 6. And within a couple of days, we'll know who all 8 are. I'm anxiously looking forward to that. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. I keep saying it, but man, the playoffs are fun this year because they're this unpredictable, and it's due to parity. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.